He fell into a coma the same night his wife walked out of their small apartment. Not because of an accident, but because of heartbreak. She left him for the doctor who saved his life, the same man who once stood over his hospital bed, giving her hope. For months he lay there, silent, forgotten, while she flaunted her new life beside the man who once kept him alive. Everyone thought his story was over, until a janitor cleaning the ward one quiet evening picked up his dusty phone and dialed a random number. That single call set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Because days later, when he finally opened his eyes, what he did next didn't just shock his ex-wife, it changed both their lives forever. The apartment still smelled faintly of lavender and rain that night, the kind of scent that made memories heavier. Nathan Miles sat on the couch, his hands trembling as he read the last message on his wife's phone that she hadn't bothered to hide anymore. "Dinner at 8, my love. I'll tell him tonight." His chest felt hollow, not angry yet, just empty. On the dining table, the half-eaten meal he'd cooked for their 6th anniversary had gone cold. Across the room, Amelia paced with that quiet confidence she'd been wearing since she met Dr. Reed Callahan, her husband's neurosurgeon. "Nathan, you'll never understand," she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. "You've stopped living since the accident. Reed gave me a second chance to feel alive again." Nathan turned his head slowly, his eyes searching hers. "He saved my life, Amelia. And now you're giving him mine?" His voice broke mid-sentence. She avoided his gaze, picked up her packed suitcase, and brushed past him without a word. At the door, she paused only once. "Don't make this harder, Nate. You'll find peace one day." Then she was gone, heels tapping down the hallway like a countdown to silence. Outside, thunder rolled across the night. Nathan stood motionless for several seconds before collapsing onto the couch, hands gripping his chest. His breath came in jagged bursts, the world spinning. The lights blurred, his heart raced. And then, stillness. When neighbors found him hours later, he was unconscious, eyes half open, lips pale. The ambulance sirens screamed through the neighborhood as Mrs. Keller from next door clutched her robe and whispered, "Dear God, not him too." The hospital smelled sterile and cold. Machines beeped, nurses whispered, and Amelia's name sat printed neatly on the visitation log, only once the day after. She didn't return again. Weeks passed, then months. His only consistent visitor was Marcus, his childhood friend, who came every Friday evening, bringing fresh flowers and silent prayers. "Wake up, man," Marcus would say, brushing dust off the window ledge. "You've got too much fight in you to leave like this." The janitor, a quiet man named Louis, always mopped around Nathan's room near midnight. He'd glance at the patient, shake his head and murmur, "World's full of heartless people, brother, but sometimes God keeps receipts." He didn't know anyone still checked Nathan's old phone until one night when it rang from under a pile of magazines. Out of habit, Louis picked it up. The screen glowed faintly, one missed call, unknown number. Something nudged him, that curious whisper fight sends when the world's asleep. He unlocked the phone using the note stuck to the back. Marcus had written the passcode for emergencies and scrolled through old messages filled with unreturned love. With a sigh, he dialed the last number in the call log. Random, impulsive, meaningless. Or so he thought. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, soft but startled. "Hello? Nathan, is that you?" Louis froze. The sound of that voice, a woman's voice, wasn't Amelia's. It trembled with shock and something deeper, something personal. He hesitated, staring at the comatose man whose monitors blinked faintly in rhythm. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I'm not him, but I think you might want to come see him." The voice on the other end fell silent, just before a whisper came through. "Where is he?" Louis looked at the sleeping man and whispered back, "St. John's Hospital, room 214. He hung up and stared at the phone like he'd just signed a contract with destiny. Outside, the night deepened, rain tapping against the window in a steady rhythm. Somewhere in the darkness, a story that the world thought was over had just been rewritten by a janitor who believed in accidents of fate. And 3 days later, when footsteps echoed down the hospital corridor again, The woman who walked in was not Amelia. Rain had stopped, but the city still looked washed in sorrow. Outside St. John's Hospital, a gray sedan pulled up quietly. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, clutching a worn leather purse as if it contained the last pieces of a life she once knew. Her name was Elena Brooks, Nathan's older sister, the voice the janitor had heard that night. She had left for Chicago years ago after a family rift no one cared to fix. Nathan had begged her to come home for his wedding, but pride had kept her away. Now walking through the sterile hallway under the pale fluorescence, she whispered, "I should have been here." Louis spotted her first. The janitor paused mid-mop, his eyes softening as he recognized the same quiet grief he'd seen in the patient's face. "You must be the one I called," he said, stepping aside. Elena nodded. "I'm his sister." He led her down the corridor to room 214. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the silence. Nathan lay there unchanged, his skin pale, his hair a little longer, his chest rising gently with each mechanical breath. Elena pressed a trembling hand against the glass window before whispering, "You kept breathing without us. I don't know how." Louis lingered in the doorway, hesitant. "He's been like this since last year. No one came except a friend named Marcus. Your call, maybe it means something." Elena turned. "You don't believe in coincidences, do you?" He smiled faintly. "Not after tonight." She entered the room and sat by her brother's bedside. From her purse, she drew out an envelope, creases worn from months of regret. Inside was a photograph of Nathan, Amelia, and their 6-year-old son, Liam. The boy's smile was crooked, missing one front tooth. "He doesn't remember his father anymore," she murmured. "Amelia told him he's gone." Tears traced down her cheeks as she brushed a strand of hair from Nathan's forehead. "You always forgave too easily, Nate." For a long while there was no sound but the quiet hum of machines. Then, as if from somewhere deep in his subconscious, Nathan's fingers twitched. Elena gasped, eyes darting to the monitor. The beeping steadied. She pressed his hand again, whispering, "If you can hear me, come back, please." Across town, Amelia was laughing over dinner at a rooftop restaurant, the glow of candlelight bouncing off her diamond bracelet. Reed Callahan poured her wine and said, "To new beginnings." She smiled, though something about the toast made her chest tighten. From the next table, a familiar voice interrupted. "Amelia." She turned. It was Marcus, Nathan's loyal friend. His eyes burned with disgust as he looked at the couple. "So this is what new beginnings look like?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Marcus, this is hardly the place." "No," Marcus said, leaning forward. "The man you left is still lying in a hospital bed. You want to play house with the doctor who saved him? Fine. But remember, truth doesn't stay buried." Amelia's face flushed. "You don't know what you're talking about." He smiled coldly. "Maybe not. But someone called his sister last week. She's back in town." Her wine glass froze midair. "His, sister?" "She's at St. John's. You might want to visit before the headlines do." Marcus stood, left money on the table, and walked away, leaving behind a silence heavier than the city air. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, remembering Nathan's quiet eyes the night she left. The way he didn't scream or beg, just sat there as if something inside him had already broken. Reed turned over beside her. "You're thinking about him again." She began but stopped. What could she say? That guilt felt like a ghost that never left the room. That every time she saw the hospital in the news, her heart clenched. The next morning she drove alone to St. John's. She parked 2 blocks away, covered her face with sunglasses, and walked through the side entrance. Nurses whispered as she passed. Some recognized her. Others only judged silently. Outside room 214, she froze. Through the glass, she saw Elena asleep in the chair beside Nathan, still holding his hand. The sight hit harder than she expected. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the doorknob, then stopped when she heard footsteps. Louis appeared behind her, mop in hand. He looked at her, recognition dawning. "You must be Amelia." Her voice cracked. "How did you know?" He lowered his eyes. "Because I've seen guilt before, and it usually walks quieter than grief." Amelia looked through the glass again, tears slipping beneath her sunglasses. He doesn't deserve any of this. Louis stepped closer. Then make it right, before fate does it for you. Inside the room, Nathan's finger twitched again, stronger this time. The monitor beeped sharply, once, twice, then steadied into a new rhythm. Louis turned toward the sound. "Ma'am," he whispered, eyes widening, "I think he just heard you." Inside room 214, the sunlight broke softly through half-closed blinds, striping the hospital bed with gold. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and lilies. Elena had replaced the flowers again. Nathan lay still, his body unmoving, yet beneath the surface something had begun to shift. The faint electrical impulses in his brain spiked and fell, like ripples under frozen water. Inside the quiet world of his coma, memory had begun to breathe. He was back in their old kitchen, warm light flickering against Amelia's hair as she stirred a pot of soup. She was humming, barefoot, wearing his oversized sweatshirt. "You work too hard, Nate," she said, smiling without looking up. "You'll burn out before you ever get rich." He'd laughed then, sliding his arms around her waist. "If I burn out, at least I'll do it building something for us." That memory felt like home, but it twisted, warped. The next image came sharper. Amelia sitting at the edge of the bed months later, her phone glowing against the darkness. He'd been half asleep when he heard her whisper, "I'll be there, Reed." "Don't worry." She had lied then, said she was visiting her mother. He remembered kissing her goodbye at the door, still believing she was everything pure in his world. The dream shifted again. The hospital room, the surgery lights, Reed's voice saying, "He's lucky to be alive." Nathan had opened his eyes briefly then, blurry and weak, and saw Amelia clutching Reed's hand a little too long. He'd ignored it. "She's just grateful," he'd told himself, even as the nurse looked away. Now, in the coma's twilight, those small details came back like ghosts demanding recognition. Every lie he'd chosen not to see, every excuse he'd made for her fading warmth. He saw himself at dinner, weeks before she left, trying to tell her about the new project at the firm. She'd smiled politely, checked her phone twice, and murmured, "That's nice, Nate." No excitement, no pride, just distance disguised as peace. A low hum filled his ears. The dream dissolved into darkness. Then a voice, faint, distorted, slipped through the fog. "Come back, Nate. Please." It was Elena's voice. It pulled at him, tethered him to the surface. He tried to move his fingers. In the real world, his right hand twitched faintly under the sheets. The next image came unbidden. Their son, Liam, running across the yard holding a paper airplane. "Daddy, watch!" he'd shouted. Nathan had laughed, but Amelia had been inside on a call, ignoring the sound of their laughter. The child's airplane had crashed, and he'd cried until Nathan lifted him up and said, "We'll build another. That's what men do." The memory hurt now. Liam was growing up without him, without truth. In the hospital room, Elena noticed the tear that slipped from the corner of Nathan's closed eye. She leaned forward, whispering, "You hear me, Nate? You're not alone anymore." Somewhere deep inside, his mind replayed Amelia's last words the night she left. "You'll find peace one day." But her peace had come dressed in another man's promise. His, it seemed, was buried inside a silent body. He wanted to scream, to wake, to tell her he had forgiven her even before she left. But his body refused. A nurse entered quietly, checking the monitors. "Looks like his neural response is improving," she said softly. Elena smiled faintly. "He's fighting." Meanwhile, across town, Amelia sat at her vanity staring at her reflection. She hadn't slept in days. The words Louis spoke, "Make it right before fate does," replayed like a curse. She picked up her phone and opened a hidden photo folder, pictures of Nathan and Liam at the beach, taken the summer before the accident. Nathan's smile in those photos was everything Reed never gave her. Warmth, safety, devotion. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Behind her, Reed appeared in the mirror. "You've been quiet lately." "I went to see him," she admitted. He froze. "You what?" "I just needed to know he's still there." Reed's jaw clenched. "He's gone, Amelia. He's not coming back. You need to stop torturing yourself." She turned slowly, eyes red. That's what you said the night he collapsed. But something tells me you might be wrong. Back at the hospital, Louis replaced the flowers again. As he stepped out, the lights flickered, a subtle power surge. The monitor's pulse stronger for a moment, then steadied. Inside his mind, Nathan stood in that kitchen again, the same lavender smell. Only this time, Amelia turned to him and whispered, "If you ever wake up, don't look for me." He reached out, and the scene shattered like glass. Nathan gasped inside the coma world, a soundless inhale, and in the real one, his chest rose sharply. The monitor alarmed briefly. Elena jumped to her feet, calling the nurse. His eyelids fluttered once, twice, then stillness again. But this time, his hand didn't just twitch. It held on. Morning crept in through the hospital blinds, slow and golden. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was the only sound that had remained unchanged through the months. But today it carried a quiet urgency, like something underneath it was fighting to sync with life again. Nathan's fingers twitched, then relaxed. The air around him seemed to hold its breath. Elena sat beside the bed, reading aloud from the worn children's book Liam used to love, her voice trembling on the last line. And the lion didn't give up, even when the forest forgot his roar. She closed the book and smiled faintly. You used to read this to him every night, Nate. Maybe he still hears you. Outside the door, Louis leaned against his mop handle, watching. He'd seen miracles before, but none that looked quite like this. A man trying to claw his way back from silence because people still spoke his name. 2 hours later, Elena's phone rang. The caller ID made her chest tighten. Amelia. Please, Amelia said before Elena could speak. I know I don't deserve it, but can I see him? Elena hesitated. Why now? Because I can't breathe knowing I left him like that. Her voice cracked. I just want to say something before it's too late. Come after visiting hours, Elena said coldly. He doesn't need another shock in daylight. She hung up and sat back, staring at her brother's still face. You hear that, Nate? Even the ghosts are coming back. Across the city, word was spreading. Marcus had posted a single line on social media. He moved his hand today. Within hours, co-workers, neighbors, even distant relatives began to whisper. Someone sent flowers with a card that read, Miracles still happen. Amelia saw the post too. She stared at her screen, heart pounding. Reed was still asleep beside her, unaware of the sleepless nights she'd spent scrolling through old photos of the man she betrayed. The guilt had become physical now, a tightening in her chest every time she thought of Nathan's voice calling her name the night he collapsed. She slid quietly out of bed, pulled on a coat, and left before sunrise. By the time she reached St. John's, the parking lot glistened with dew. Nurses were changing shifts. Louis met her in the hallway, his expression unreadable. You came back. Amelia nodded, her eyes red. Does he know anything? Louis shrugged slightly. Maybe not with his eyes, but souls have their own way of listening. He opened the door. Amelia stepped in and froze. The sight of Nathan nearly took her breath, his face thinner, his skin pale, but somehow still dignified. She sank into the chair opposite Elena, who didn't look up from the chart she was reading. Say what you came to say, Elena muttered. Amelia swallowed hard. Nate, I don't even know where to start. You were always so patient with me. I thought love was supposed to be exciting, perfect, constant. I didn't realize it was supposed to be faithful. She reached for his hand, hesitant, fingertips brushing his skin. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I just stopped understanding what love was. Elena turned away, unable to watch. The monitor beeped softly, steady, unchanged. But inside Nathan's mind, the voice stirred something deeper. He heard her words through fog and distance, like echoes underwater. I never stopped loving you. For a moment, that sentence felt like warmth, piercing cold steel. He wanted to open his eyes to tell her what she had destroyed and what she had unknowingly saved, the part of him that could still feel. His fingers moved again, slow and deliberate. Amelia gasped. Elena, did you see that? Elena rushed forward. The hand twitched again, stronger. Call the nurse, Louis said, pushing the door open wider. Amelia leaned closer, whispering, If you can hear me, Nate, please wake up. Inside the fog of his mind, Nathan saw their home again. The night she left, the door closing, her footsteps fading. But this time the sound didn't echo into silence. It folded into another sound, a child's laughter, Liam's voice. Daddy? The sound cut through the darkness like light through glass. He turned toward it, reaching. The pressure built behind his eyes, heavy, blinding. In the real world, the heart monitor jumped. Beep, beep, beep. Elena clutched his arm. Nate, can you hear me? His eyelids trembled violently. A strangled breath escaped his lips, a sound raw, human, alive. Amelia's hands flew to her mouth as the nurse rushed in, shouting for the doctor. Louis stepped back, whispering to no one in particular. Told you, God keeps receipts. Nathan's head shifted slightly on the pillow, his breathing ragged but steady. His eyes flickered open halfway, unfocused, confused, but open. The first thing he saw wasn't Amelia. It was Elena crying beside him. He blinked, lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. Just one tear sliding down his cheek as the machine screamed to life. The heart monitor steadied, its rhythm no longer mechanical but human. Nurses rushed in, calling out vitals, adjusting tubes. Elena stood frozen, tears running freely, whispering, You did it, Nate. You did it. Nathan's eyelids fluttered open again. His gaze wandered, unfocused, across the room. Light hurt his eyes. His throat felt like sandpaper, but when he tried to move, a low rasp escaped. Half a word, half a breath. Amelia leaned forward. Nate, it's me. He blinked slowly, eyes settling on her face. It took a moment for memory to assemble meaning from sight. His lips parted again, and one word came out, barely audible. Why? The single syllable sliced through the silence sharper than any accusation. Amelia's shoulders shook. She couldn't answer. Elena turned away, whispering to Louis, Call Marcus and the boy. Within an hour, the room filled with quiet chaos. Doctors running checks, nurses adjusting monitors, Elena pacing, Louis standing guard by the door, as if protecting a miracle. Reporters had begun hovering outside the ward. Someone had leaked the story. Coma patient awakens after a year. Wife married his doctor. The world had found its headline. By afternoon, they moved him to a recovery suite. Nathan's body was weak. Every blink looked like effort. But his mind slowly, painfully, was piecing things together. He stared out the window at the city skyline, whispering hoarsely, How long? Elena pulled her chair close. 1 year and 2 months. He nodded faintly, processing. Liam? He's with me, she said softly. He thinks you're on a long trip, but he's coming tomorrow. At that, a faint smile ghosted across Nathan's lips, the first movement resembling life beyond pain. When evening came, the hallway smelled of disinfectant and hope. Louis stopped by with fresh coffee for Elena. He's already making the news, he said quietly. Reporters outside the gate. They're calling it a miracle. Elena exhaled. Miracles come with prices. Behind the closed door, Amelia sat near Nathan's bed, twisting her wedding ring, the one Reed gave her. She slipped it off slowly, laid it on the side table, and stared at it like a confession. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said softly. I just needed to see you breathing again. Nathan's eyes moved toward her. His voice was faint but firm. You found peace. Did it help? Tears slipped down her cheeks. No. He turned his gaze back to the window. Then maybe peace isn't something we find. Maybe it's what we give. For a long moment, neither spoke. The monitor beeped softly, like punctuation to everything they couldn't say. Down the corridor, Marcus arrived with Liam. The boy clutched a paper airplane, eyes wide, uncertain. Marcus knelt beside him. Remember how you said Daddy was sleeping? He's waking up now. You have to be brave, champ. When they entered, Amelia instinctively stepped back. Liam froze at the sight of the machines and wires, the slow rise and fall of his father's chest. Elena knelt beside him. Go on, sweetheart. Say hi. The boy walked forward hesitantly, holding up the paper airplane. "Daddy, I made this for you." Nathan's eyes filled instantly. His hand trembled, barely lifting, but Liam rushed closer, placing the airplane in his palm. The paper crinkled, the sound small yet sacred. "Hey, buddy," Nathan whispered, voice breaking. You grew taller." Liam grinned through tears. "Mom says I talk too much now." Amelia turned away, biting her lip. Nathan caught the motion in his peripheral vision, her silent shame blending with the innocence of their son. For a moment, forgiveness looked possible, but far, like a sunrise still hidden behind clouds. Then a nurse stepped in, urgency in her tone. "Mr. Miles, I need to check your vitals." Elena guided Liam out gently, promising they'd return tomorrow. As the door closed, Amelia gathered her courage. "Reed doesn't know I'm here," she confessed. "He thinks I've let go, but I can't. Every night I dream you're trying to speak, and I can't hear you." Nathan's eyes met hers, calm but unreadable. "Maybe it's because truth doesn't need to shout, Amelia. It waits." Her breath hitched. "What are you going to do now?" He looked down at the crumpled paper airplane in his palm, the only thing that didn't feel like a lie. "I'm going to learn to walk again, and then I'll decide who I want to be when I stand." Amelia's voice broke. "Nate, go home," he whispered. "Tell your son his father's awake, and tell your husband he saved the wrong man." Her knees buckled slightly, but she nodded and left quietly. Outside, the corridor buzzed with rumor. Reporters pressed against glass doors. Whispers filled the air. Lewis watched her leave, muttering, "Looks like the storm's just starting." Inside, Nathan held the paper airplane up toward the sunlight. His eyes closed briefly, not in exhaustion, but in prayer. The machine beside him beeped steady and strong. The sun over St. John's Hospital looked different the morning Nathan Miles took his first step. The air felt charged, cameras already flashing through the lobby windows. Outside, vans with news logos idled at the curb. His story had escaped the walls. Man awakens from year-long coma after wife marries his doctor. The words were everywhere. Inside the rehabilitation wing, silence. No reporters, no pity, just the sound of sneakers squeaking on polished tile and the click of the physiotherapist's stopwatch. "Easy, Mr. Miles," she said. "Focus on the floor, not the pain." Nathan's hand tightened around the metal walker. Each movement felt like dragging a memory through muscle. Sweat rolled down his temples, but his jaw stayed locked. When he finally managed 2 unsteady steps, the room broke into small applause. Louis stood at the doorway, grinning. "That's it, brother. You're showing them what God's receipts look like." Nathan smiled faintly, breath shallow. "Feels like I'm paying interest on all of them." By afternoon, he sat near the window overlooking the parking lot, staring at a swirl of reporters below. Elena sat beside him with the newspaper folded across her lap, his face on the front page, half shadow, half miracle. "They're turning you into a headline," she murmured. He kept his eyes on the sky. "Then let them read about strength, not scandal." The door opened. Marcus entered, his usual confident stride muted by caution. "Hey, man," he said softly. "You're trending." Nathan chuckled hoarsely. "That's one way to come back to life." Marcus hesitated before adding, "Reed called, said he wants to visit." The smile faded. "He's the one man I still owe a heartbeat to." That evening, the hospital administrator requested privacy for a brief meeting. Reed arrived in a Navy suit, tie too neat, eyes strained. Cameras swarmed outside, but security kept them back. When he entered the room, Nathan was sitting upright in his chair. No wires, no tubes, just quiet dignity. Reed's voice was low. "You look stronger than I expected." "I am," Nathan replied, "because I stopped pretending pain was weakness." Reed exhaled. "I didn't plan any of this. Amelia and I—" "You don't need to explain," Nathan interrupted. "You saved my life. Then you took it. Life's funny that way." Silence hung between them, heavy, honest. Reed finally said, "She regrets everything." "I know," Nathan said softly. "Regret is the tax we pay for choices we don't have courage to undo." Reed looked down, shame flickering behind his eyes. "If you want me to resign from the hospital, I will." Nathan shook his head slowly. You'll keep saving lives. Just remember mine every time you hold a scalpel." For a moment, Reed couldn't speak. He nodded once and left quietly, passing Louis in the hallway. "How's he doing?" Reed asked. Louis wiped his hands on his uniform. "Better than most men who got betrayed by both love and science." Back inside, Elena was scrolling through social media. "Look at this," she said. "Someone started a fundraiser for your recovery. Half the city's calling you a symbol of faith." Nathan looked uneasy. Faith isn't spectacle. But fate had other plans. The hospital PR department scheduled a press conference without his consent. The next day, reporters crowded the auditorium. Nathan, thinner but upright, entered wearing a simple gray sweater. Cameras clicked like gunfire. He looked at the sea of faces and said, "I don't have much to say about betrayal. Pain already spoke for me. What I learned is that love, even broken, still teaches us how to live." Reporters asked about Amelia. He paused. "She made a choice, and so did I, to heal instead of hate." Outside the hospital, Amelia watched the broadcast from her car, tears smudging her mascara. Liam sat in the back seat holding another paper airplane. "Mom," he said softly, "can we go see Dad again?" She wiped her face. "Soon, baby." But the moment she started the car, her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "He's walking." At that same hour, Nathan left the conference, exhausted but lighter. He passed through the corridor where Louis waited. "World thinks you came back for revenge," Louis said. Nathan smiled faintly. "Maybe I came back for truth." "Same thing sometimes." They laughed quietly. The laughter faded when Nathan saw, through the glass doors, Amelia standing across the courtyard with Liam at her side. The boy waved. The mother hesitated. The world watched. Nathan took one step forward. No walker, no fear. Just gravity and grace. The world outside St. John's had changed. Reporters camped by the gates. Strangers lit candles on the sidewalk, holding signs that read, "Faith wins and Miracle Man walks again." Taxi drivers slowed to watch. Teenagers filmed clips on their phones. Nathan's story had escaped his control and become everyone's symbol for something. Love, betrayal, resilience. But to Nathan, it wasn't a story. It was unfinished business. Elena pushed his wheelchair down the front steps, though he was already standing more than sitting. The wind brushed through his hair, warm and restless. "You don't owe them a performance," she said. He smiled faintly. "I owe myself closure." At the curb, Marcus waited beside his car. "You ready to go home?" "Not yet," Nathan replied. "First stop, my son." They drove through downtown, passing digital billboards flashing his photo beside the headline, "The Man Who Woke Up." It felt surreal. Nathan watched in silence, the city reflecting across his window like fragments of a life he no longer recognized. When they reached Elena's townhouse, Liam was outside with a toy car, the paper airplane from the hospital still in his hand. He ran toward Nathan before anyone could stop him. "Daddy!" Nathan crouched, pain shooting through his legs, but his arms opened wide. The boy crashed into him, laughing, unaware of cameras across the street snapping photos through the fence. For a moment, the noise of the world disappeared, just the sound of his son's heartbeat against his chest. "I missed you," Liam whispered. Nathan held him tighter. "I missed you more." Inside, Elena served coffee, trying to keep conversation normal, but the tension lingered, the way Amelia's name hung unspoken in every pause. "Where is she?" Nathan finally asked. Elena sighed. "At the clinic. Reed's under review by the medical board. The media storm brought up his ethics complaint. She's terrified." He nodded slowly. "Fear's a good teacher." That evening, Nathan walked into the quiet of his old apartment, the one he hadn't seen since the night of his collapse. Dust covered the furniture, sunlight filtered through thin curtains. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, except colder. He stood by the table where the half-eaten anniversary dinner once sat and whispered, "We were happy here once." Louis appeared behind him, carrying a folded newspaper. "They're saying the hospital wants to use your recovery for a documentary." Nathan smiled without humor. "Everyone wants to profit from pain until they feel it." Louis hesitated. "She came by earlier, waited outside the gate for an hour, didn't come in." Nathan's jaw tightened. Maybe she finally learned silence. But silence had a way of breaking when least expected. The next morning, Amelia arrived at the hospital for her shift. She'd returned to work as a volunteer counselor in the trauma ward, perhaps a penance. As she stepped through the glass doors, a reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Callahan, how does it feel to know the man you left has forgiven you publicly?" She froze. "He forgave me," the reporter nodded. "He said in his statement last night that healing matters more than revenge. People are calling it the greatest act of grace this year." The words struck like thunder. Amelia turned away from the cameras, her eyes filling. That evening, she stood at Nathan's door, trembling. When he opened it, neither spoke for a long moment. "I saw the interview," she said finally. "You said you forgave me." He nodded. "Forgiveness isn't a gift, Amelia. It's release. I had to let go to live." She stepped closer, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I don't expect a second chance. I just want to help you rebuild, even from a distance." He studied her face, the exhaustion, the regret carved into every line. "Rebuild," he said softly. "You helped me tear it down, but maybe that's what made room for truth." "I'll never stop being sorry," she whispered. "Then don't," he said gently. "Just be better. For him." Behind her, small footsteps sounded. Liam peeked through the door, unsure whether to run or hide. Amelia knelt, hugging him tight. Nathan watched quietly, the kind of silence that comes after storms. Then a knock on the door broke the moment. Marcus entered, face grave. He held a white envelope stamped with the hospital's seal. "What's that?" Elena asked. Marcus handed it to Nathan. "Official notice. Reed's medical license hearing is tomorrow, and they've requested your testimony." Nathan's eyes darkened. Amelia froze. Lewis, standing in the hallway, muttered under his breath, "Looks like God's receipts just went to court." Nathan looked down at the envelope, fingers trembling, not with anger, but with decision. The courthouse smelled of polish and paper, order forced onto human chaos. Cameras lined the steps outside. The public wanted a finale to the story they'd turned into spectacle. "The Coma man testifies today," read one headline flashing across every phone screen. Nathan arrived early, walking without assistance now. A simple navy suit, no tie. His presence silenced the hallway. Even strangers stepped aside. Beside him, Elena carried a folder of medical records. Marcus trailed behind. And Louis, the janitor whose call had begun everything, stood awkwardly near the door, refusing to leave. Inside, the disciplinary board convened at a long oak table. At the center sat Dr. Reed Callahan, his license under review for ethical misconduct and breach of patient boundaries. His lawyer whispered strategy, but Reed's hands were trembling. Amelia sat in the second row, eyes lowered, wedding ring gone. She looked like someone watching the ruins of her own choices. When Nathan took the stand, the room stilled. The clerk swore him in. "Mr. Miles," the chairwoman began, "we understand you were under Dr. Callahan's care when the alleged relationship began." Nathan nodded slowly. "Yes, he saved my life." "And your wife later married him?" "She did." The murmur that followed was instant. The gavel struck twice. The chairwoman continued, "The board must determine whether Dr. Callahan's actions violated his oath. You may tell us, in your own words, what you believe justice looks like." Nathan exhaled, gaze drifting toward the window where morning light cut across the floor. "Justice isn't about punishment," he said quietly. "It's about truth being seen." He turned to Reed. "You were my doctor, my friend. You gave me back my pulse, then took what made it beat. But if I came here for revenge, I'd still be in a coma. Just a different kind." Reed swallowed hard. "Nathan, Don't," Nathan interrupted gently. "I learned something lying in that bed. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequence. It just stops it from owning you. Whatever the board decides, I've already decided mine." He faced the panel. "I don't want his license revoked. Let him keep saving people. But make him teach every intern about me, the man he betrayed. Make my story part of the oath he broke." Gasps rippled through the room. Even the board members exchanged glances. Reed's eyes filled. "You'd let me continue?" "I'd let you remember," Nathan said. The gavel struck once. Request noted, the chairwoman said softly. The board will deliberate. When the hearing adjourned, reporters surged. Microphones, cameras, questions. Nathan walked through them like fog. Do you forgive her too? Someone shouted. He paused at the steps, sunlight flashing off the courthouse glass. Forgiveness isn't a favor, he said. It's freedom. We both needed it. Outside, Amelia waited near the fountain, hands clasped. The noise faded when he approached. I thought you'd destroy him, she whispered. Destroying him wouldn't rebuild me, Nathan replied. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know how to face Liam after all this. He looked at her quietly, by telling him the truth. That his mother made a mistake and his father chose mercy. He'll learn what real strength looks like. She nodded, shoulders shaking. Thank you for not hating me. He smiled faintly. I did for a while. Then I remembered you once loved me enough to sit through storms. The rest belongs to time. Lewis approached, cap in hand. Sir, he said awkwardly, people out here want a picture. You're kind of the reason folks believe again. Nathan chuckled. Then make sure they believe in the janitor too. Without you, none of this happens. Lewis grinned. Guess God just needed someone to dial the right number. They shook hands. Cameras flashed, but this time Nathan didn't flinch. The sound no longer felt like intrusion. It sounded like closure. Later that evening, he returned to the small park near his old apartment. The air was warm, the skyline glowing amber. Liam was there with Elena, running across the grass. When he saw his father, he ran full speed, waving another paper airplane. Fly it with me, Dad! Nathan knelt, launching it upward. The white paper caught the wind, rising high before drifting toward the sunset. Liam cheered. Amelia watched from a distance, tears glinting like apology in the golden light. Nathan looked up at the sky, whispering to himself, finally awake. The airplane spiraled once, steadying in midair, then soared